What's going on, everyone? Happy New Year. Our first video in 2022. We left it a few days, decided to give ourselves a wee New Year break because we've been putting out quite a lot of videos December, November. So we're back on the grind, and this time it's with an individual movie review. So I'll pass over to Callum to explain what The King's Man is about, because that's the film we're going to be talking about today.
And also a new experience for the Movie Mates channel is having 300 subscribers,
Yes, I
a
know.
milestone which we
Yay.
we hit the other day, which I
Yeah.
don't think it was as big of an exclamation mark on the channel as we'd had hoped, because we were hoping to reach that by New Year's Day, and then or by New Year's Eve, because we wanted to finish off 2021 strong, and then I think we maybe got it on the second or something. We're very excited about it. I'm very thankful to all those new people that have joined the channel.
Yeah, a million percent, a million percent. Even YouTube, on our analytics page, YouTube give us a little like trophy saying like well done on 300 subscribers. So that means a lot.
Lovely.
A virtual trophy nonetheless. So yes, thanks very much guys for all your support in 2021. Feels weird, 2021, this is 2022. Yeah, anyway.
It's gonna mess me up for a few weeks.
Yeah, I know. I've on pieces of paper at work. I've been writing 2021. I've just realized that, and
Me too.
it's not that year. But yeah, we really appreciate all your support last year. It means the world to us, and we're gonna hopefully move on to bigger and better things in 2022. Keep putting out videos for you guys, and as long as you keep liking, subscribing, and we really do appreciate that. So yeah, mate, what's the film about today? We're gonna be talking about.
So the film that we have to talk about today is The King's Man, a title which I don't think either of us like particularly. It's the third film in the Kingsman franchise, directed by Matthew Vaughn. It's a prequel to the previous two films, which in this film it's established, how Kingsman, the organization, was created. It follows Rafe Fiennes and his character's son as they journey through this situation. This very fantastical version of historical events, and how they impact history, and how Kingsman is created as a response to these sort of hyper realistic situations.
Yeah, I've just realized is it I think my whole life I've called Rafe Fiennes Ralph Fiennes. God.
I mean, it is how it's spelled. Like, it's not. Uh,
Oh
I
God,
it you know.
I'm so
I
sorry.
mean, I go by the rule, pronounce it how they pronounce it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but if you go by how it's spelled, no harm.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, just before we kick off today's video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on The King's Man down below. It is a horrible title, isn't it? I mean, it's just not, it doesn't work well for me.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan.
it
I mean,
it
I
does
get
it
it,
doesn't
it
help
works,
if
but
you. Yeah, it's a
I'm not
bit
a
of
fan.
a, Batman Begins, the Dark Knight Rises
Yeah,
situation,
no, it
or
is.
the
It
Dark
is.
Knight, where that's just going to be annoying to put on your shelf if you alphabetize them, because they're
Yeah.
not going to be together. Like it was initially called, I believe, Kingsman: The Great Game, which, I mean, also a bit of a dead title when you compare it to the other two. I mean, the Secret Service is just lifted directly from the comics, so I mean you can't blame the filmmakers there. And then I think the third one is meant to be called Kingsman Blue Bloods, I think, if I remember correctly. So that I think has a bit more intrigue to it than the Great Game.
Yeah,
And
without a doubt.
what Great Game are they on about anyway?
Don't know. World War. Well, to be fair, there was a football match on Christmas Day as our in World War One. So maybe that's what they were talking about. Great game. I'm not sure,
Maybe.
but yeah. Just before we actually, I've already given that. Yeah. Also, just before we get into this movie, we usually split it for any new viewers. We split it up into non-spoiler and spoiler. So do you have a lot to say for non-spoiler, mate?
Just a handful, more
Yeah.
non-spoilers than spoilers, though.
Yeah. Well, you kick us off. You kick us off.
I think obviously, because this was one of the real casualties of the pandemic when it came to release dates. It's one of the most it's one of the most pushed films in history. There was obviously historically New Mutants, and now The King's Man, and now Morbius.
Oh
Ones that
fuck
have
yeah! We
had
didn't even talk about that.
you
Shit.
know upwards of 5 release dates. Spanning several years. I think Morbius has had a high number of release dates, but it's often being pushed by, like, 2 months, then 3 months, then 6 months. Like, it's not like the New Mutants, where it had this almost like 3-year window. Have you
Yeah.
even seen the New Mutants? Did we do a review of it?
We did a review of it, yeah.
Did we?
It's one I forget to be honest, because
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, the release date just chopped and changed, similar to No Time to Die as well. It was certainly a casualty of the pandemic too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like you said, New Mutants was I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Yeah, so with this being a big casualty of that, and it being pushed constantly, it obviously had to have multiple marketing campaigns, which then created the opportunity for a lot of trailers, and more than comparatively would be normal. So I think audiences probably had seen a lot of this film, and I don't know that there is much left as a surprise, which is I think why my non-spoilers sort of outranks my spoiler section. I think that may
Yeah.
be why, just because I know what's surprising about the film and what's not.
I feel like generally like this film, even from the trailers, is marketed as very much like alternate history, right? It's if for the history buffs, there's a lot of things to enjoy here, I still think. And the Kingsman films, they always have a unique visual style, don't they? Especially with the action. But I was strangely surprised that this one was directed by Matthew Vaughn. It just, I don't know, it felt in some ways quite tame, but then in some respects it did feel like traditional Kingsman as well. Of course, this doesn't have any of the original cast from the first two, by the nature of it, it's a prequel, but it does feel different to me. I'm not sure whether it's because there's been a long time between the films or not. What has it been, like 5 years since Kingsman 2? It's been a long time.
Yeah, yeah, like it has been pretty wild. Uh, I do think, yeah, it's the most restraint that I think Matthew Vaughn has shown since X-Men First Class, and I said this to you whenever we left the cinema, because I love Matthew Vaughn. I love his films. But I think they are, a lot. There is a disgusting element to a lot of them, and I think Kingsman: The Golden Circle, for a lot of people, pushed that a little bit too much with the Poppy Delevingne plot in that film, and people were sort of, you know, sort of grossed out by the anal sex joke at the end of the Secret
Yeah.
Service. So I think this franchise, especially for Matthew Vaughn, is sort of a disgusting for disgusting sake in some circumstances. So to see this be kind of like a very gentlemanly, modest film, like it was kind of jarring. Like it is for the most part just a war film. Uh, and I don't mean that to sound like I'm talking down to it. It's just genre wise, I'm surprised that it was principally a war film. That's what I mean, really. But I think this is sort of getting quite poor reviews, and obviously we don't really go by that for the most part. But I really enjoyed this film, and I think there are a few issues that I had with it, principally the villain within the film, which I think we'll talk about more in the spoiler section. Uh, I wasn't a massive fan of that, but aside from that, I just thought good war film, actually funny. I think it appeals to a wide demographic. My mom somehow enjoyed the first Kingsman movie, even though she is sort of normally very very put off by inappropriate humor or violence. But I think maybe because it was a very you know high it's a very unrealistic universe. It's very saturated in color, and people's heads are exploding into like colorful fireworks. So I think you can maybe reconcile some of the distaste that you have for it, first to a certain degree. But I think this film would be right up her street. Like I think war film, light comedy. Like I think it really has mass appeal. So I'm surprised so many people don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't really enjoy many war films. Like I can enjoy a good one, don't get me wrong, like Hacksaw Ridge, I really appreciate. I think that's a fantastic movie, but it wouldn't be my favorite genre. But I think this one does extremely well to balance so many genres at the same time. It's got that spy element to it of traditional Kingsman, but like you said, it's got that war, but also blends it really strangely with like like comedy too, which works. One thing I always do enjoy about the Kingsman films is that it manages to blend sort of Hollywood A-list actors with actors who I'm not so familiar with. Obviously, Taron
Mhm.
Egerton, famously, teams up with Colin Firth, and Samuel, not teams up with Samuel Jackson, but is in that movie together. They're in the movie together, and here it does the same. With Ralph Fiennes and people like Jimon Honsu and Gemma Arterton with lesser known names like Harris Dickinson. which I hadn't heard of before. And I think it blends what those movies do really well is it does blend like the new up and coming actors with the ones who are already household names. Taron Egerton's probably a household name now. Obviously appeared in Rocketman, I think, as well, didn't he? So he's been in loads of big movies. It's something I was appreciative that they carried on here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very much so. And I think it really hits you when you get to the credits where you're like, this is one of the greatest casts ever assembled. Like
Yeah, it's
this is,
fantastic, mate.
you
Yeah, it's
know,
really good.
they obviously put very big spotlight on British talent, in the Kingsman films.
Yeah.
They in the first two films, they have American villains, and then pretty much the rest of the cast is padded out with British actors. And you're just thinking like, wow, like this is sort of a culmination of British film star history, like of many different generations. I mean, I think you would expect a lot of the the older generation of actors to maybe not be into this kind of franchise, but then you remember that the first film, before they'd even proven that it could be a success, had Michael Caine in it, and then in this film that's sort of carried over with the vast cast of very very high caliber actors. So I mean, are you surprised that sort of very high profile people flock to this franchise?
I can see why now. Like looking back at the first one, it seemed like like the cast is fantastic, and they wouldn't have known how successful it would have been. So yeah, I think it's remarkable what they've done with it, and it's one of those. I think originally, especially when the first one came out, it was one of those like cult, movies where like not many people had seen it, but if you had seen it, you loved it, and you always said, "Oh, what about that church scene, for example?" And I think there's definitely a chance of us doing a podcast on the first two and then the third one when it comes out. But yeah, I mean, I think originally it had that sort of cult film dynamic, whereas now it's totally mainstream. Like everyone I know has seen these films. You know what I mean? Like they're really, especially in the UK. I think like you said, they've got a Britishness to them. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I feel like this one, I don't really get the hate, to be honest. I don't think it's as good as the first Kingsman, but I think it's better than the Golden Circle, without a doubt. I think this is a really, really strong one here.
Yeah, the day after we saw this, I did rewatch the first and the second film. And the first one, it's very fun and exciting, and the third act is great. But I mean, like any origin story, it does have parts that drag a little. And then the second film is just sort of all action all the time. And then people really disliked certain elements about that film. One, that it was sort of disgusting, for seemingly no reason, because it didn't really serve the story. And also, the villain motivation, I think people sort of struggled with. But I like it a lot more than I did when I last saw it, and I like it, a lot more than the general consensus seems to be. And that seems to be, what's carried over to this film here, where I do like it a lot more than everybody else does. I do think it's maybe still my third favorite of the franchise. Honestly, it probably, for me, I think Golden Circle is my favorite, and then
Okay, that's
Secret
interesting.
Service, and then The King's Man. I don't know whether that's just me trying to be like, I have to have like a rogue opinion. I don't think it is. Like I think I just like when the characters are established, and then obviously you have Merlin being like the star of the show, and we both love Mark Strong. So I think him, being probably the second main character in that film, arguably, I think that really added an element to it that sort of made me as a fan appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, they're all really strong. I don't think there's really a weak one out of the bunch. Like, I still would enjoy all those movies. Like, they're great popcorn films too, with a fantastic action. So yeah, I can see why you like that one more.
I think the first two provide a better. I mean, I didn't see the first one in the cinema, granted. I did see the second one with you. I do think that the first two are more of a visual spectacle. I think with the oversaturated, third acts with like the snappy editing, with the action and all the bright colors and the explosions. Like I do think they're more of a visual situation where you're like, what appeals to a cinema goer. I think if you wanted a good cinema experience, the second one's the best one, and then this one, I think from a storytelling writing perspective, is probably stronger than especially the second one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely.
So we've already talked about how it ranks. So I think all that's left really in the non-spoiler section is to ask Matthew the iconic movie mates question. Was the film a massive hit or a piece of shit?
Well, like we're saying, I mean, it definitely, I don't think it warrants the poor reviews it's getting. Granted, it's a departure from the first two in terms of setting, but also cast. So I can get maybe people why people aren't as strong with it, as on liking it as
Do
much.
you think
But
people felt like tricked with like the history of the franchise for it to be such a different kind of film? Do you think
yeah,
people
I think
were
I was expecting
expecting?
I was maybe expecting the ancestors of the characters from the first two, people like, is that Harry, Colin Firth's character called Harry's
Mhm.
like relatives. I'm not sure. But I think I don't think it's a departure at all. I think it's something fresh, it's something new, and yeah, it's a massive hit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I do love a war film. It's not my favorite genre, but when it's done well, I really love it. I would say Hacksaw Ridge is one of my favorite
Yeah.
films. I think it does really incredible stuff, and I think obviously this is very different from that. But you get some serious stuff in this. You do feel the weight of war, especially with Conrad. Riff finds his son, in the film. Like I think there's some really powerful stuff there that I think maybe is going underappreciated because the kind of people that are seeing this maybe aren't the people who like that kind of film. I don't know. Maybe it's an issue of expectations. But I wouldn't be sure. I went into it not knowing anything about it. Hadn't seen any of the trailers. I just knew the rough outline of what I was going in for, and I really enjoyed it. So it'd be a massive hit for me. I think the standard of writing of the comedy, like it's more infrequent in the film than in the first two films, but I think it's probably that higher standard.
Mhm. Well, that's great to hear. I think it's a good film to end 2021 with, even though this is our first 2022 video. It'll be
Yeah,
our
we
last.
did see this a while ago.
We did. Moving into spoilers now. I don't have much to say here, but what I do is generally quite good, similar to non-spoilers. And there is a few. There's quite a lot of shocking moments in this film. One particularly
Mhm.
that completely sort of blew me away, and I really respected, was when they just kill Conrad just out of nowhere. Like it's actually like the camera pans and like he just gets shot in the head by like one of his own
That
troops. Like,
was
it's crazy.
brutal.
I thought it was really good though. Like it was really well executed. No pun intended there, but it was. I really that's awful to say, but it was really well. Like I thought it was really well done. Like you kind of get the sense throughout the scene that he's going to make it out alive, and he's going to be that one in a million who makes it out. But no, it I think it perfectly illustrated like the just the horror of war sometimes, and the
Yeah.
monstrosity and the casualty. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, especially because it was friendly fire. You're just like, oh, this is so fucked. And you never even know whether the Duke of Oxford, Ralph Fiennes' character, you don't really know if he knows that he was killed by another member, of his side. Like
Mhm.
you don't actually know if he learns that, and whether that would change his direction as a character or anything. So I mean, it is just awful, and you think this is probably the most faithful. A lot of this film is a redirection of history. Especially with Rasputin and these characters you know placing themselves in the history of like Franz Ferdinand and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like the thing that is a real reflection of what went down is the is how they treat the war in this film, where people were disrespected for not wanting to join the war, and then people were you know so embarrassed to not be a member of the army that they signed up and lied about their age and everything, and then these horrible things happened when they were over, and like it's horrendous, and I'm just praying that that there's never a war again, and that we are never conscripted into the army, because it's just not something that I'm capable of.
Yeah, it gets you thinking, man, doesn't it? I mean, I think that this film, that whole chapter of Conrad at his World War I journey is remarkable. Like that's probably my favorite point of the film, and it is a shame, I suppose, in some regards, that his character gets killed off at the 2/3 point, halfway through even, because I really liked where his character was going, and I can somewhat acknowledge why that's maybe a negative point for the film for a lot of people. Maybe don't like that shock value for shock value's sake. I don't think it was for shock value's sake. I do think it was a good way for the film to go down. Like I think that was a good way to turn. But I feel like the one thing that will limit this film for both of us is probably the villain reveal. Yeah, it's definitely not. It's not this franchise's standout. I think ever since Samuel L. Jackson, it's kind of been downhill from there, in my opinion. But I'd like to hear yours.
Yeah, I think it's very much teed up in a way in the film that you were gonna be, this is a character that's familiar to us. So, I started making, a suspects list in my head, and I was thinking, right, if they're going for actual proper shock, then they'll, do some kind of thing where it's Mark Strong playing Merlin's granddad or something. Like they'll give us a familiar face from the franchise, and that's gonna be the
That's
shock.
interesting.
I thought it's either gonna be that or it's gonna be a shock reveal of a character within the film. And so, the character of Morton was probably in like my top three contenders. And I was thinking, okay, like it could be Merlin. I was thinking who's bald. So I was like, who's bald, who could be bald? And I was like, well, it's you've got Merlin, you've got whoever, and you've got Morton, whoever my third one was, I can't remember. But I was thinking, but if it is Morton, I mean, my response will be, who cares? He's been in two scenes up to this point. Like, it may be surprising that that's him, but sometimes a surprise doesn't matter if, you're like, oh, I'm surprised by that. So what? Like, if that's the reaction, you probably haven't, built up the character enough. We didn't know him well enough. We didn't know him well enough to have an opinion of him being a good guy. Like where you really need to surprise the audience is, make the audience love this character, or at least believe they're a good person, and then subvert that. Whereas we were kind of like, yeah, he's a dude. He's been in two scenes. He seems to, you know, he seems to care about his job, and that's all we really know about him. So to have it be, oh, and he was on the other side the whole time, you're like, okay. I know we're both part of the Great Mates Facebook group. For Planet Broadcasting Great Mates. Who are all fans of the Weekly Planet, and all the surrounding podcasts around that. It's a really great fan community on Facebook, and there was a spoiler thread about this film going, and one person was like, "Yeah, I'm Scottish, and I find this very hard to watch because it is just another thinly veiled, very much mustache twirling villain who starts a war because he hates England because he's Scottish." And they just thought that was like a really pathetic attempt to create villain motivation, and it was
I can agree
just
in some
really
respects with
really
that.
not
Yeah,
up to
it's quite
par.
stereotypes in some aspects, like without doubt. I feel like if I was going to highlight another negative of the film, it would probably be the opening isn't great for me. I'm not a fan of when a movie kills off a character in the first 5 minutes, because unless you know them really well, like a Loki in Infinity War, well, not really Loki in Infinity War, but you know what I mean. It's not really a good move, because like where's the emotion there? When we know this character's 5 minutes, we don't really care. So I feel like
Yeah,
killing off Conrad's mother, obviously is a very important to the characters, but I wasn't a big fan of how it opened, if I'm honest. I'm glad the film really it got I actually think it got better as it went on. Like I feel like every act was better than the last, in my opinion.
yeah, you reminded me of someone here, and I hate to say it, and people will probably respond with, well, you probably couldn't do any better, and fair enough, but I'm not being paid to do it. One of the worst child actors I've ever seen is the child who played Conrad in the opening, and I was just thinking, Jesus Christ, like, I wasn't even allowed to do like my school play in P7. Well, I was relegated to a background performer, and I was thinking I could fucking nail being Kid Conrad in comparison to this one. Like I'm sorry, like I hate to say it, but it just astounds me that he got that job, because they say it's so hard to make it in Hollywood. Like, is he someone's son or something? Like I hate to say it because
Eddie Furlong
but I mean
levels.
he was probably paid very generously. He's in this massive blockbuster franchise. He's got his start in Hollywood, and I feel like some dodgy deal was done, because I'm sorry.
I've been thinking, Edward Furlong's not that bad. He's pretty good.
I need to rewatch T2. Like I think it was bad when I watched it, but maybe I'll feel differently. Like we do often reference Edward Furlong. it may have been the writing with Edward Furlong, to be fair, because he is a bit like, he's one of those characters who's, he's 13 or whatever, but he's trying to act like a, like a 20-year-old, and he's trying to act like a
Are you
cool
talking to
90s
moi?
adult.
Dipshit
Yeah,
or something? Is that the
that
line? I
that
don't know.
is that was a low point. But again, that is the writing, to be fair. So maybe if I watch that with a different perspective. But this kid, I'm sorry. Like I again hate to say it.
Well, he's not in it again
Who-
after the 5 minutes, so it
what
was.
were the casting directors thinking? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. Another speaking of actors,
He was shit.
speaking of actors, um, this movie, like, it's bizarre because it has Aaron Taylor Johnson in it, right? And it's, I was foolish. I didn't know he was in this. So whenever I saw him and he has like a kind of a cameo, it's not really, it's more than a cameo, but it's like maybe 10 minutes total screen time. It's a bit surprising. You think of an actor of his level, of his caliber, household name like that. Like I I I, I did enjoy that. Like, it was nice to see him in, and he's great. And it was just refreshing to see, like, a familiar Hollywood face in this. Even for the little amount of screen time. Like, for me, that shows that, like, actors like him must have passions for the project. If he doesn't have to be the big star in it, right? He can just be in there for 10 minutes and play his role. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I assume he must have done it as like a favor to Matthew Vaughn. I mean, I don't, depends. Well, I wonder what way that works around, whether Matthew Vaughn's doing him a favor by giving him a job in his film, or whether he's doing a favor for Matthew Vaughn by appearing in his film. Because I don't know who's more big time. Because obviously Matthew Vaughn has this big franchise, and he made the Kick-Ass films, and he did, he resurrected, X-Men from, like from the grave, with X-Men First Class. So maybe he's of a higher caliber
I
than
remember it
Aaron Taylor
happened.
Johnson. It's
I
it's hard
remember
to
it
say.
happened with Ryan Johnson and Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Knives Out, where, like, he get like ran either whichever way it went around. Ryan Johnson gave Joseph Gordon-Levitt like a cameo as one of the sheriffs or something in that film.
Did he?
So
Is Joseph
yeah,
Gordon-Levitt in Knives
he,
Out?
he has like a voice role in it. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's quite common in Hollywood. Like, one thing I've noticed recently in the last few years, well, and since that movie came out, is that I think Chris Evans and Ryan Johnson have built up quite a good, like work relationship, where, like, they're in a lot of projects together now. Like, I think there was one announced the other day that he's in now or something. But yeah, like, I guess it is quite common these days. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a favor or something either way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like a lot of directors sort of have their muse. Like, Danny Boyle has Ewan McGregor. There are
Nolan. Yeah,
plenty of
Nolan's got a
examples
few,
of
hasn't
that.
he?
Yeah, absolutely. Nolan with like Christian Bale and Cillian Murphy. Like they're the ones who really crop up in a lot of their projects. So yeah, it's not surprising to see. I had heard rumors, as I told you, that he was apparently meant to be playing Eggsy's granddad,
Mhm.
and I don't know whether that was just, you know, speculation and that was actually incorrect, or whether it was, a leak that was then changed in reshoots. I mean, it fundamentally changes a lot of the scenes. If you change his name, then that also changes, Conrad's death scene and every scene that Aaron Taylor Johnson's in.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that really stacks up. Like, I think it must just be that was, you know, rampant incorrect fan speculation.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say so. It's a pity. It would have been nice wee Easter egg, I suppose.
Yeah, because I think if you excise every scene that's in the tailor shop, then this film is literally just, well, it's not just, once again, I don't mean that, uh
I know.
in a bad way. It's a war film, a vaguely comedic war film in a hyper stylized universe. If you remove all connections to Kingsman, and they're quite tenuous, I think that this is a very differently received film, because I think people know what they're getting more, whereas people thought they were getting a Kingsman film, but they're getting a war film in the Kingsman universe.
Yeah, I think that's a really, yeah, without doubt. Like, I think the way this film was marketed wasn't great, if I'm honest. I think, don't get me wrong, like, it's definitely been hindered with the pandemic, but um, I don't know. I never really watched, particularly got invested in any of the trailers here. I can't even remember watching them, if I'm honest. And that's, I don't remember. I don't think there was really much hype around it. Usually with a Kingsman film, I think the hype for the second one was a lot more, if I'm honest. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just don't think the energy levels were the same.
Yeah, I think I mean, most likely, this is probably a situation of they had a script, someone wrote a script. I mean, this is once again speculation, but they might have, written a script for a project, and then they developed it and realized that had potential to then be in the Kingsman universe. Like that does happen a lot with scripts. I don't know that it happened in this scenario, but it would make enough sense that did happen. And I'm just wondering if they removed all references to it. I think it would probably have been better critically received because people would have known what to expect. But I think it probably would have done poorer financially. I don't really know how it's doing at the minute, but I doubt sort of a niche comedic war film would do well in the pandemic, without the force of a franchise behind it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have anything further on the film, Matthew.
No,
Do
mate,
you have
neither
anything
do
else?
I. That just leaves us to conclude our first video of the year. Thanks so much, Callum, for your time, and thank you very much,
Thank
viewers, for
you.
your time. Stay tuned on the channel in the next week or two. We're probably going to be doing our best and worst of 2021. We're going to be doing a review of The Matrix, probably as well. Scream 5, 6, whatever it is. I don't know. It's
5, yeah.
5. And well, it would have been a Morbius review probably around this time of year, but as we said,
Yeah.
got pushed back. And one I think we're super excited for is the Batman man. Not the
I'm sorry.
Batman man, the Batman. But
Why
yeah.
did they push back Morbius? Like they must be doing reshoots because Spider-Man, made so much money.
Oh, man, it's
Like
still
it
it's
made
still making peas, dude. Let me
it
have a
made
look to see what it's making
like
here.
it made ridiculous numbers. Like this is absolutely the time to like capitalize on that success and bring out
Absolutely.
another Spider-Man affiliated film. Like,
Yeah.
if you do them, I mean, maybe they don't want to encroach on like the window of, viable box office time for Spider-Man, but like, just keep on rolling with the Spider-Man films and watch the money roll in. Like by waiting this amount of time, you're gonna let it die down. So unless they're doing reshoots, like I'm really curious to see this film because I just don't know how this universe works. Because obviously, we see that it's you know Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man on that wall where it's written murderer. It's the you know I think it's the Daily Bugle logo of the MCU, and then it's references to Venom, but also the Oscorp building from Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And we thought that
And
would
there's
maybe make
Vulture in it,
sense
right?
because
It's
yeah, and
crazy.
there's Vulture, yeah, yeah. So like we thought it would maybe make sense, if somehow, in Spider-Man No Way Home, like the universe has got scrambled and it was, elements were brought into this world. It sort of like, at a point in Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse where
Yes,
sort
that's
of
what I was
like all
thinking.
the like, street lights sort of blended and made this weird like art piece in the street. We thought maybe, oh, an Oscorp building, gets erected like in the MCU or whatever, but now that doesn't stack up because that's not how No Way Home ends. Like No Way Home ends with sort of like a neat bow on like all the universes being closed and everything being all right, except for whatever consequences like Doctor Strange has to deal with. But I imagine that's concerns about things coming through into our universe, not they're just now suddenly being in an Oscorp building. So like, I'm just really really
I'm
curious about
curious.
what that means for the film, and it might just be Sony has just you know so Sony just hasn't paid enough attention to like be consistent, and they've just accidentally put a bunch of
We'll find out.
nonsensical stuff into their film.
Yeah.
But I think the Oscorp building sort of I think the Spider-Man being the Raimi Spider-Man, one, that could be changed, and two, it could be a mistake. But like the Oscorp building being the one from Andrew Garfield's
I'm leaning
universe is
towards
not
it's
a
an Andrew
mistake.
Garfield. I think it's an Andrew
Yeah,
Garfield universe
I
setting, and
I
then
think
that
I
they'll
think
tease
it
the third one. Then I think that's what we'll do.
I think so.
Yeah. But as I say, I mean that's another kettle of fish that we could talk about that for ages. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the film down below if you've seen it. We'd love to read them. And yeah, hope you guys are all well. Hope your family, friends are all safe and well too. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.
Bye bye.